What's going on, guys? We're back out here today, and today's the day we're going to get the engine swapped. Manny still has his D15B2. It's essentially stock. Just has a header on it and has a catback exhaust, the 10-Rye. Our goal today is to get this engine completely pulled, and we want to get the ZC installed that you saw us putting together in the last video. We're going to attempt to put on, he has this header, but I'm not sure if the piping is the same length or the flange is going to match up in the same direction. We're going to check that. We're also going to put on, he has one of those eBay exhausts as well. We're going to get that put onto the car just so we can get his old exhaust removed. It has some issues where there's one of the exhaust hangers was broken. I had to re-weld it back on, and also at the front of it, it now has a hole in it just from being a little bit too low. And had you not seen the last video, we're doing the DPFI to MPFI at the same time, but he has the Monotech harness, which already has all of the wiring done for us. Gives you a little bit of instructions. You just need to repin a couple of the fuel injectors, that way we can swap them over, plus add the wiring for the two new ones. And then removing and repinning a couple of the distributor plugs, because those are in the different position, but that's relatively easy. There's only 4 wires that we need to depin and plug back in. And then same with the resistor box. Instead of creating a harness for the resistor box to the injectors to the ECU, this now just plugs into this harness. So this should save us a lot of time getting this engine set up. So we're going to get started, guys. We're not going to walk you through how to pull an engine. It's relatively easy. I think you could probably get the gist of it from watching some of my other videos. I'm just going to go ahead and hyperlapse everything, kind of see the process of us getting this one pulled. It is around 9:30 in the morning. We hope to have this one pulled within the next, usually takes about an hour for me by myself, but I'm going to have Manny do a lot of it. So by 11:30 is our goal. That way we can go grab some lunch, grab a couple coolant hoses for the ZC engine, and come back, put those on, and then just get that one dropped in and bolted up. There it is, guys. We got it pulled out. It took us about an hour and a half. It was 9:37 when we started, and it was 10:56 once we finished getting it completely removed. Alright, now that we got that pulled, it was a lot easier being able to remove the engine with the wiring harness since he has that Monotech. So all we had to do was just disconnect everything, and it just came straight up. We didn't have any issues getting the motor pulled. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to change out all of the lines on the back of the engine. The coolant hose here, the heater hose. Same with the heater hoses from the firewall to the engine, and then any other coolant hoses on the back of this. These look like they've been changed before, but I don't know the age of them. So we're just going to change it while it's out because it's very easy to get to them. Then we're going to plug in the harness. We're going to have it ready to go. and drop the engine in with the harness similar to how we pulled this one out, because we'll just tuck it up onto it and it'll be a lot easier instead of trying to feed it to any of those plugs on the back of the engine, like the fan switch and the oil plug right there. The oil, I guess it's just a light for your dashboard, that oil sensor light. So we're gonna get started on that and then we'll get that engine dropped in. And real quick, Manny was telling me that under his dash, his heater doesn't work. So his blower motor under the dash has been removed. His heater core is still there, but he doesn't use it. Obviously he doesn't have heater, can't blow it. So we are actually just going to remove the valve for the heater controls and the rest of the tubing here. We were going to replace it. Well, I thought we were, but then he told me that. So what we're going to do with this hose, we're just going to loop it. We're going to run it off the thermostat housing and we're going to loop it right back to the entrance onto the bottom of the head. So we just make a small loop right here. That way we can eliminate all of those extra hoses inside the engine bay. Alright guys, and here we got everything completely finished up. Here's that looped hose we were talking about. Then the harness too. The harness fits perfectly. Really nice how it bolts up, well, connects up, I'm sorry, to every little point. You have the extra wiring here which plug into the shock tower wires, and then the extra harness itself, which we're going to de-pin 4 different wires at the ECU for the injectors. But it's really cool how it's very well built, put together well. It kind of just hides behind the engine. It's not a tucked harness, nor is it advertised as it, but it's now cleaned up really well, and then it has the wiring that goes to your resistor box already set up. So save you a lot of work if you decide you don't want to do the DPFI to MPFI wiring. Okay, we've got the motor set up on the engine hoist. One thing I want to share real quick, if you guys have never seen this before, these are urethane filled OEM mounts. I set these up about, I don't know, 3 weeks ago just so they could dry completely, and now they're solidified. Essentially what you're doing, you're filling the open spaces in between the mounts. So now you have more of a solid mount with less chance of the rubber tearing. And these aren't super hard. I've seen some of them that are really hard, but the urethane is actually relatively flexible still, but I think it'll still be a nice upgrade to these mounts. And these mounts were in pretty good shape to begin with. They weren't all torn and nasty. So I think it should just help extend the life of those. And there we got the engine bolted up. All the mounts are set up. Now we're just going to work on the radiator lines, battery, get everything hooked up. When I first disconnected it, his car has a lot of random wires. Like this wire I cut, it heads to the battery terminal, and it was actually leading to the blue connection on the distributor. So I don't know if we're going to need that anymore. I'm hoping we don't. Obviously the new wiring harness should be perfectly fine once we connect it to here. I don't know what they were using to power it or what was going on with that, so hopefully we don't have any issues once we get it started. We're going to work on getting all this bolted up, and we'll catch back up once we are attempting the first start. Okay, we got everything set up. Coolant's done, all of the lines, fuel line. The dual point fuel line works with this engine. Just kind of wrapped it up and then down underneath this coolant line, and it bolts up perfectly. I don't know if the nut from the dual point setup will work on the fuel line. I had left on this one. It's a little different. I think this one is necessary for this particular setup. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe I'll leave it in the comments if I can remember. We're going to try it out with that one. The throttle cable, the dual point throttle cable still works perfectly fine. You just have to loop it around this way and then to the throttle bracket and of course onto the throttle body. Now we're working on the ECU. Manny went ahead and removed it. We're just going to follow the instructions and fill it with some fluids. Get the oil, transmission fluid, and the coolant. And we're about to give it a start here hopefully in the next 15-20 minutes. So we had everything finished up and we were adding the coolant. We already did the oil and the transmission fluid. Unfortunately, the water tube, which connects from the water pump over to the thermostat housing, on this engine, I guess just from being old, it had, let me show you right here. You can see where it's missing a chunk of it. So it started leaking once the coolant filled it up to that level. We went ahead and pulled it off of his old single cam, so luckily that one is a direct fit. We're going to try it out now. Alright guys, we got the ECU finished up. Really easy. All we did was plug in the 2 new wires on the harness into A1 and A5. And then we had to rotate A3 and A7, so that way the red was in A3 and then the yellow was A7. Then the B plug, there was a wire in B12. We remove it. Then the 2 new wires from the little harness, we just plug those into B10 and B12. I guess everything else is the way it should be. So now we have that tube swapped. And now we're going to attempt to start it. Nothing leaked out. We filled it up completely with radiator fluid. So let's give it a shot, Manny. You got your keys?
Yeah.
Prime it once. And just see if the check engine light turns on.
The key you have over here.
It might be loud with the exhaust not hooked up. I'm going to check for gas leaks, okay? There we go. Turn it off.
Put it up.
Yeah, we're going to have to mess with the injectors and move them around. Okay. So you guys may have seen that. It's squirted up. So basically what we need to do is kind of move the injectors around. They're not sitting correctly. Funny thing is I never disconnected any of those, but we're going to fix it anyway. So when I pulled the fuel rail off, it just slid off of the little green O-rings on the injector. So this engine has been sitting in my garage for the last 14 months. I pulled it in February of 2018. So sometimes when that happens, these tend to shrink. They lose their elasticity because they're not being lubricated any longer. So we're just going to change them out really quickly and then try to start it again. Here's a look at those O-rings. When I use my little pick to pull them off, they're super brittle and they just started falling apart as I pulled each one off. So let's give it a shot, man. Go ahead and try it. Any check engine lights? Did it turn off?
No, it's on. There's no check engine.
Okay, go ahead and crank it over.
Yeah.
Try it.
Doesn't want it.
No juicage?
Everything's on, but it doesn't want to crank.
You plug the starter back in. Where's that screwdriver? Interesting. Is the key still in ignition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Take it off?
No, no, no. Leave it on, leave it on. We're gonna let it warm up. Push the brakes. Push the brakes. Good to go, you can let go. No check engine lights either, right? Perfect. Alright guys, so I'm not sure why it didn't start, but that's something we can look into and not a big deal. No want to check engine lights. We're going to let it idle up and let it warm up. Maybe we can check for any leaks. Then we'll get the tires, the wheels and tires put back on, and get the hood on, and we're going to go for a spin. Get back to you guys in one moment. Alright guys, we got it running. This is his first drive, and we don't know why we changed. We changed the starter. For some reason it's not starting with the key in the ignition and then just cranking it. So we swapped the starter from the D15 to the ZC. Same issues. We tried a couple different things, checking the wiring. His car is a kind of a rat's nest to begin with. So some we're gonna leave for another day. He's gonna drive right now, and I'm gonna adjust the clutch cable when he gets back. And we'll see how it feels. And there's no check engine lights. As you can hear in the background, it's a little loud. The exhaust, the stock exhaust manifold that's on the ZC, it didn't bolt up to his exhaust that he has on there, that 10 Ryan, that test pipe. The orientation is a little bit different, so we weren't able to bolt it up. So he's going to get a new test pipe, one that has the telescopic flanges on it, so that way we can make sure it's correct. And then with that, he bought an eBay, one of the Spec D exhausts. We're going to put that on there also, and then get it set up. We'll probably take care of that in the next part of this video. I'm going to end this one here today, and that way you guys can get a look at it when we get the rest of the exhaust setup done and finished. Alright guys, so in the last clip you saw Manny driving around the neighborhood, just getting the swap running. It's about 2 weeks later. He's been driving it daily now, trying to put some miles on the clutch. He put some bottle caps on there with just some everyday tires, some daily driver tires, brand new. He's going to use those for his first track session just because he doesn't have the funds right now for some upgraded wheels and tires. And for his exhaust, he got that eBay setup on with a test pipe, and everything bolts up as it should. So we'll get some sound clips of that. You'll be able to hear it at the track in the next video. But it sounds like a typical eBay exhaust. It's kind of loud, still raspy. He's probably going to put a new muffler on it and a resonator to try to bring it down, but also keep the original shape. And Manny buttoned up everything under the hood, put on a short ram intake. We got the battery tie down on there. We weren't able to diagnose the no start issue for now, so he wired up a push start button on there, which works perfectly fine. When we get a chance, we'll go back in there and see if we can determine why it wasn't working with the ignition. Maybe it was just the ignition switch itself, but we haven't had a chance to mess with that yet. And that'll wrap it up, guys. He's got a couple hundred miles on there. We got about a week to go before we have the track session. So come back and visit us next week. We'll have some track videos up and anything else that follows. Thanks for watching, guys.